Thank you, Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a special meeting of Council, the Village of Marifel-Wolford, at coming up to 3:10 in the afternoon of Thursday, April the 9th, 2020. A wee bit of delay getting going as we ensured that the technology is working so everyone is connected. Before I get to the calling the meeting to order and identifying everybody that is participating, I just wanted to walk through a wee bit of the, I'll call it the protocol and procedures of working this way. So on March the 23rd of this year, Council voted unanimously to pass bylaw 26-2020, which allows Council to meet via electronic means during a municipal or provincial state of emergency. In addition, it was decided that the regular council meeting schedule would be suspended to allow for greater flexibility from the procedure bylaw and to allow the mayor to call meetings on an as-needed basis during this time. So, how to participate? Members of council, you are connected, and again, momentarily I will identify everybody for the public record. In terms of the meeting process, once we are all connected, the procedural bylaw will continue to apply to the meeting. The mayor, myself, will call the meeting to order. I will ask you to confirm your attendance, including senior management. Then I will ask for one member to be the mover of all motions for the course of this meeting. And if there is a motion that is that a member does not wish to move, he may indicate so at that point that that particular motion is on the agenda. I will also ask for another member to be the seconder of all motions for the course of the meeting. And again, if there is a motion that the member who has been the seconder does not wish to move, he may indicate so at that point of the meeting where the motion is on the agenda. Each motion will require a recorded vote. As the chair, obviously, the mayor cannot see you for a show of hands. So I will ask each member to vote at the time that the motion is called. And I'll ask folks if they have questions. I will be going around the table very slowly and concisely each time. If you have a question, say yes, and then very clearly ask the question. If you don't have a question, just indicate no, and I will go to the next member of council. I think I've pretty well covered most of what needs to be covered to help ensure that it is a very, not just a productive meeting, but productive in the sense that it is very clear and concise. And when I call for the vote, I will obviously be asking on the recorded vote if you are in favor, if you are opposed, or if you are going to abstain. So as I bring this meeting to order, I would like to acknowledge that on the line, in the council chamber, at very well separated, is myself, Mayor Struthers. We have staff members, our CAO, Doug Robertson, our clerk, Christina Gauntlet, and pardon me for the pronunciation, and our treasurer, Kirsten. On the line, we have council members Timothy Malloy, Robert Foster, Michael Cameron, and Don Helpney. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
At the beginning of this meeting, I would like to remind everybody that this is extremely difficult and challenging times. It is worth reminding everybody to self-isolate, social distancing, wash your hands often and properly. I'd also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the amazing work that our municipal staff have been doing in so many aspects of our operations. Everything from getting organized to working from home, and even those things in and of themselves are challenges. As we all know, in rural Ontario, in some parts of our municipality, it's difficult to have high speed being high speed. Nonetheless, the work is getting done. It's business as usual, but not the way we usually do business. Every aspect of service that our municipality provides normally is being done, just not necessarily normally. Of particular interest is the the process and procedure at our landfill site. We know that our rural residents use our landfill site as a point of contact Wednesdays and Saturdays. We also know that typically a lot of people view that part of their life is as much social as functional. Staff have said have been amazing in setting up a very smooth, controlled process for people to bring their garbage to the landfill site, maintain social separation, and have virtually no contact. Hats off to everybody in our municipality that works for all of the residents of Marrickville-Wolford. Having said that, I think I've already called the meeting to order. If not, I'll do it again just to make sure that we have come to order. The question I would ask, and I will go around the table one at a time, if there is a disclosure of a pecuniary interest, and if there is, please state what the general nature of that interest would be. Again, members, I'm going to be going clockwise as if you were sitting around the table. So, Mr. Malloy, do you have a pecuniary interest?
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney?
No.
Thank you very much. Duly noted by our clerk. I do need so, as I indicated, I would like a member to indicate if they would be a mover. Now, I know it's going to be difficult because I don't see hands going up. So I will go to my left for a mover, and I would say, Mr. Malloy, would you be the mover of the motions on our agenda today?
Certainly.
And I will go to my right, and I would ask Mr. Halpney, would you be the seconder of the motions on our agenda today?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And just be mindful, if there is a motion that comes forward on our agenda, and either the mover or the seconder do not want to be the mover and the seconder for that motion, please indicate so at that time, and we will seek another member of council to fulfill that.
Okay, can we ask one quick question?
And you would be?
Timothy.
Yes, Mr. Malloy.
So when it comes to that point, do you actually want us to say we're moving it, or is it just an automatic that will be penciled in?
I will indicate that, so for example, before me I have the motion to approve the agenda, and I will be saying it's moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney.
You don't have to say anything then?
Correct. Other than if you did not want to move the motion, you could say just I will ask if the mover and the seconder are okay to be the mover and the seconder, okay?
No problem.
Thank you very much. So before me, gentlemen, I do have the motion to accept the agenda as presented, and that motion is being put forward by Mr. Malloy, and it is seconded by Mr. Halpney. Mr. Malloy, are you okay to be moving this motion?
Absolutely.
Mr. Halpney, are you okay to be seconding this motion?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford does hereby approve the agenda of the special council meeting of April the 9th, 2020, as circulated. Mr. Malloy, how do you vote, sir?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you all very much. That motion is carried. And just so you know, so I have indeed signed the motion, and our clerk will indicate on the motion as if it were a recorded vote, and in this case, obviously, everybody, as you heard, is voting in favor of the motion. Next, gentlemen, as you can see in the agenda, there are 3 sets of minutes from previous meetings, and we will do them one at a time, as is normal practice. And so it is going to be moved by, this is regarding of the special meeting of, special council meeting, public meeting regarding Parkview Homes application. So the mover would be Mr. Malloy, and the seconder, Mr. Halpney. Mr. Malloy, are you okay to be the mover? Mr. Halpney, are you okay to be the seconder?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So it is indeed moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Meeting Apr Wolford does hereby approve the minutes of the special council meeting / public meeting regarding the Parkview Homes application for plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment of March the 10th, 2020, as circulated. Are there any errors and or omissions, questions or comments? And I will again go around the table. Mr. Malloy.
No, fine.
Mr. Foster.
Will Rosita Lauterbach's name be corrected in the minutes? It appears several times misspelled with a comment spelling behind it, so I'm just wondering if that would be good.
I'm not sure our clerk heard the question clearly, and
I did, your worship. Thank you. I would recommend then we can adopt the minutes as amended, and I will make that amendment.
was everybody able to hear the reply from our clerk? Mr. Foster, did you hear that?
I heard that. That's acceptable.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Cameron.
Yeah, acceptable, yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney.
That's fine.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. This motion is passed, carried as amended. Thank you, Mr. Foster, for that. The next set of minutes regarding with reference to the special emergency council meeting of March the 16th. And it would be moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Mr. Malloy, are you okay with moving that motion?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney, are you okay with seconding that motion?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. It is indeed moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Meeting Apr Wolford does hereby approve the minutes of the special emergency council meeting of March the 16th, 2020, as circulated. Are you okay with that motion, Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
In favor?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. The motion is carried as circulated. And the next set of minutes is regarding the meeting of March the 23rd. And that was a regularly scheduled council meeting. And the mover would be Mr. Malloy and the seconder, Mr. Halpney. Mr. Malloy, are you all right to second that to move that motion?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Halpney, you are okay to second that motion?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. It is moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Meeting Apr Wolford does hereby approve the minutes of the regular council meeting of March the 23rd, 2020. Are you in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
In favor?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. The motion is carried as circulated in the minutes. Moving on our agenda, we are at item number 5 under planning, and that is regarding bylaw 27-2020 to declaration of land surplus to municipal needs. And the background to that, gentlemen, is in relation to the property known as the medical center, and there is a portion of what used to be an unopened road allowance, which was some time ago a closed road. And it is a portion of that road at the junction of Brock Street West and Reed Street that would be ultimately negotiated and offered for purchase to the medical center. So the process today would be to declare those lands surplus. Should that move forward, then there would be the posting of appropriately so by staff for a notice to sell, And after that, the health center would be making an offer of purchase, and we would go through the rest of the process, which we have already started in terms of the actual contract of sale with the medical center. So that is a bit of the preamble to it. I'll put the motion on the table and then go to ask members if there are any questions. So the mover would be Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Mr. Malloy, are you okay to make this motion?
Yeah.
And Mr. Halpney, you are okay to second the motion?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moved by Mr. Malloy, seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 27-2020, being a bylaw to declare the property legally described as part of lots 4, 5, and 6, block 28, part of Brock Street and part of Reed Street on plan number 6, being parts 1, 2, and 3 on registered plan 15R-12063, formerly of the Village of Merrickville, now in the Village of Merrickville-Wolford, be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 27-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. Mr. Malloy, do you have any questions?
Just one. Is it a foregone conclusion, or is it assumed that we're only selling it to the medical center, or will that be a newspaper ad saying that we're selling that property and thereby opening up to anybody who might want to purchase it for whatever reason?
Yeah, I think I know the answer, but I will ask Mr. Robertson to give a more definitive answer than I might give. Thank you. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to answer that question, Council did previously direct staff to sell the lands to the medical center. Well, I can't tell you the date and the resolution number right now. That was a decision of Council in the past. This is really a housekeeping issue to complete that transaction.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Mr. Foster, any questions?
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron, any questions?
Yes, I have one question.
Go ahead, sir.
As this process is unfolding, when can we expect to see a contract agreement between the health unit and us, the municipality? Because we had discussed that we would be ensuring that the taxpayers' interests were secured of that.
Indeed, especially if sometime in the future they were to quote unquote move away with the property and the building staying with the municipality. Good question. I don't think we're there yet in terms of signing a contract, but Mr. Robertson might be able to give a better picture of the timeline and how that process will work. So please stand by, Mr. Cameron. Mr. Robertson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through you, the lawyers we are actually getting quite close to having that done. The lawyers between the two parties are in communication with each other, and the medical center's lawyer is in the process of drafting the agreement of purchase and sale right now. So that will go through our lawyer for review, and then we'll be bringing that back to council for approval.
Could you hear the response all right, Mr. Cameron?
Yes, I did. Thank you kindly.
You're very welcome. Mr. Halpney, any questions?
No.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, you've heard the motion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Sorry. It's a habit. Mr. Malloy, in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
In favor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you. Gentlemen, the motion is carried. And the next motion, gentlemen, is regarding Main Street, actually, it's regarding sole sourcing or single sourcing. And I'm going to ask Mr. Robertson to speak to the motion momentarily, but I'll get the motion on the table first. So it would be moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Mr. Malloy, are you all right to make the motion?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney, are you okay to second the motion?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So I will read the motion, and then I'll ask Mr. Robertson to speak to the motion. It is moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that The Council of Corporation of the Village of Mayor Wolford does hereby approve the sole sourcing or single sourcing of the following, subject to the project being permitted under provincial legislation and orders. 1. Main Street Revitalization Committee Parquet Landscaping Project procurement for the design/construction of the parquet and associated components such as signage. And 2. Professional services consulting for the water and wastewater service delivery review. Mr. Robertson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. This is really just an effort on staff's part to make sure that we are 100% transparent. As you may recall, the Main Street Revitalization Committee recommended to council that we re-landscape the parquet at the corner of Main Street and St. Lawrence. Council directed staff to proceed with that project. We subsequently were able to get an extension on the grant that is funding that project, but it expires at the end of September 2020. With the pandemic occurring and some challenges with the timing with that, we did go out, prior to the pandemic, we did go out to market last year, and we had only one proponent interested in taking on the project out of 6 contractors that were contacted. That proponent is still interested in pursuing the project. So we are in a situation where we were in compliance with the previous purchasing bylaw. We have, however, Council has approved a revised purchasing bylaw, and we just wanted to make sure that we were completely transparent and that Council's in favor of proceeding with the with that single contractor that is interested in continuing with the project, recognizing that you have amended the bylaw. And unfortunately, with the timing and the season and the pressures with the pandemic, we want to make sure that we proceed as expeditiously as possible and to make sure that we don't lose the funding from the grant. And if I may add one last note on it, of course, the project is subject to the provincial government agreeing that we can proceed with this and that it is not in contravention in any of the emergency orders. So we'll be confirming that before we proceed with the project.
And number 2.
And thank you, Worship. And for the second item, again, it's something funded by a grant. We were successful in acquiring a $50,000 grant to review our water and wastewater systems operational model to make sure that we have the optimal and most cost-effective and efficient model for the citizens and businesses within the municipality. That grant we were successful in getting the grant. However, the time frame for the grant is very short. We very recently got approved for it, and the funding opportunity expires at the end of August 2020, which does not leave us much opportunity to go out to market with an RFP and then make sure that we have a full and thorough look at the alternatives for operating the plant. So in that, we are within the new procurement policy. Professional services are exempt from the procurement policy. However, just for full transparency, we wanted to make sure we brought it to council to make sure that you had an opportunity and were comfortable with us sole sourcing that.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. I will go around the table to ask if there are any questions. Mr. Malloy.
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster.
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron.
Just one on the wastewater service delivery for the professional services.
Yes, sir.
This is going to be just given the fact that we're in this pandemic, and that's to expedite this as fast as possible. Is that correct?
Thank you, Worship. Well, expediting it is because we are trying to make sure that we don't lose the grant funds.
Okay.
$50,000 is pretty significant, and it's an opportunity to really be diligent in terms of our efficiency and effectiveness in running the system.
Then I vote in favor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And I think, and the mayor is in favor as well. So, gentlemen, the motion is carried. And I just wanted, for the record, I don't think I, on our previous motions, have formally voted, and our clerk is nodding that I did. Or that I should now?
Through your worship, I've been able to see you and have seen your indication that you were in favor of the motions.
Thank
that
you.
have been
Okay,
read.
I'll just say it again, so it is caught on on the audio that the motions up until this point have been unanimous, i.e. the mayor has voted in favor of the motions as well. Thank you. Going at this slow and steady. We were doing it right once. And next, gentlemen, we are moving on to number 7, which is the CAO.
Actually, Your Worship, sorry for interrupting.
That's
We
okay.
do have one last item under the finance section,
Thank you.
bylaw 29, 2020.
Thank you very much. And that is in reference to the overview you just gave on the grant application and expediting that through a sole source procurement process.
Correct,
Or
Your
single
Worship.
source. Thank you. Okay. So the mover would be Mr. Malloy and the seconder Mr. Helping. Mr. Malloy, are you all right to make this motion?
Certainly.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Helping to be the seconder?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'll read the motion. I'll ask then Mr. Robertson to speak to it to make sure we're clear, and then I'll go around the table to see if there are any questions. So it's moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Helpney. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 29-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement between Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the Corporation of the Village of America Wolford, for the purpose of a water and wastewater service delivery review, be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 29-2020 being a third and final time and passed. And for clarification, Mr. Robertson, this is putting into play the grant that we have received to do the water, wastewater service delivery review.
Correct, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, Mr. Malloy?
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Helpney?
No.
Thank you, sir. Sorry. Are you in, Mr. Malloy, are you in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster, are you in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
In favor?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And the mayor is in favor as well. The motion is carried. Moving on, gentlemen, we are now at item number 7 on our agenda, and is regarding financial relief during the COVID-19 crisis. And I'm not sure where to start, because some of the things to say are just so obvious that we know everybody in our municipality is facing some kind of financial circumstance. Not everybody, but many are. And we are looking at an opportunity on the two of, we'll call them the pressure points that residents of our municipality face. One is taxes, and the other is water and sewer. There are many other bills that our residents have to pay, and there are many programs in place for them at the federal level for, I'm not going to go through the list, but there are many at the federal level and there are many at the provincial level. I think it is appropriate that we look and see what can we do that would be equitable for all of the residents in our municipality. One on the taxation level and the other on the water and sewer level. Mindful that we also must protect the financial sustainability of the municipality, yes, even during a pandemic, yes, even during a provincial emergency, and also one that's been declared at the county level. Having said that, in my conversations with Mr. Robertson and over the last while, I said, something needs to be brought forward for council to have a conversation and give some direction on. And to that end, Mr. Robertson has worked with staff, as indicated in the background report from staff, to see what their options there are to move forward with some kind of a decrease in the taxation rate that residents have in the 2020 tax year, budget year, and also on the water sewer for this year. We know we have already deferred any penalty interest on water and sewer rates in the first billing cycle of the year, which was January, February. The due date was March 31st, and we deferred that to April the 30th, and we were all together in indicating that we may well review that deadline prior to April the 30th. We were, in terms of quotation marks, fortunate in terms of the first installment of our tax billing was the end of February. So we did not take any action on that because the next installment is not due until July 31st, and we all know that we would at some point in time have a conversation about that. Now it's an opportunity to talk not just about any potential deferral beyond July 31st, indeed conversation about what we might do with the tax rate. So with that preamble, I would then turn to Mr. Robertson, and I'm going to ask him to speak to, briefly if you will, to the outline of the recommendations that for consideration, or the outline, I guess, of consideration for council to consider on the tax side. And gentlemen, you all have the three scenarios that are outlined. I'll leave it at that for a moment, and I'll turn to Mr. Robertson to speak briefly to his report on that for council members.
Thank you, Worship. So just to clarify, would you like me to start with the property tax section? Great, thank you, Worship. So through you, just to give council our thinking on this, obviously...
We'll clarify, so you are talking about taxes, or are you talking about water first?
No, taxes first, Mr. Malloy.
Okay.
Thank you. Did everybody hear that clearly?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you again, Your Worship. So just to give you a little bit of the mindset that I and staff were in when we went through this process. And one of the things that we recognized is, every taxpayer is really one taxpayer, and whether they're paying taxes to the federal, provincial, or municipal government, they only have so much money to spend. And a similar mindset was used in terms of thinking about the water and wastewater bills and the property taxes when we looked at that. So we wanted to give council essentially some packages to choose from. A variety of options for you, and as you can see in the report, we package those by an aggressive reduction and a moderate reduction, and then also a more conservative reduction. We did that, council, with great respect for you, Your Worship, recognizing that the situation with the pandemic is very, very dynamic. It is evolving, quite frankly, every day in terms of the impact on life. And that impact on life obviously is impacting directly on the economy. But we also don't know what the upper tier levels of government are going to bring forward yet. They have brought forward some fairly significant measures to support businesses and also to support employees throughout the province. And what we wanted to do, clearly there's some interest from the municipal level to also provide whatever relief is possible at the municipal level, recognizing, of course, that at the municipal level, especially for small municipalities, our ability to influence the economy is significantly more limited than compared to the provincial and federal level. So that was just to provide you with an overview of council staff's mind in terms of when we brought this to you. Through Your Worship, if you'd like, I can step through the financial reductions, but it's pretty evident on the report, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. What I would like to do first is go around the table to ask if there are any questions for clarification in the report. And so I will start that off with Mr. Malloy.
Yeah, just a couple of little ones. We're on property tax rate financial relief, right? Okay.
Yes.
So under the scenario A, for example, although it appears in both A, B, and C, particularly savings on the fire department washing machine, savings on the landfill compactor, both of them indicate a lower purchase price from the vendor. Is that after we already bought it, or was that part of the negotiations when we first bought it?
That led up to the final purchase. So it was after council gave direction to proceed in the negotiations for purchase.
Yeah.
We had an idea of what that price was going to be.
Correct.
Subsequent to finalizing the purchase, the dollar cost to us was lower by $1,950 for the washing machine, $9,280 for the compactor.
So these comments are just in general negotiations with the vendor in both cases, and not something we did subsequent to the pandemic, the COVID-19 situation.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you for now.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, any questions?
No question.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I was just wondering, we're talking about the tax rate presently.
Yes.
I was just wondering if when the time comes, are we going to consider waiving the owed taxes for the rest of the year? And I make that statement because given the updates that I just got this afternoon, Prime Minister, watching him on news, that they're looking at an extended period of time into August, that these restraints from people moving about and going back and forth to work will probably be in place into August and maybe well into the fall, and that there's going to be at least a 1 year vigilant, I guess, oversight, because they don't want to restart this pandemic. So given those challenges, and given the fact that the compensation packages by the government are $2,000 a month, and the average income per family in our municipality is $124,000, that would translate into approximately a $76,000 loss per family, which is quite significant. And there's over 403,000 jobs presently that have been lost in our in Ontario. Wondering that if these scenarios that we are looking at today, if there is some way that we're going to translate to the public so that they have peace of mind that we are not leaving anything off the table, and that we are going to consider extreme measures to try and mitigate this.
So, so what is the question that you're suggesting, or?
Well, we're talking about a tax decrease here in scenarios A, B, and C, the different scenarios that we have. I was wondering if we would be willing to discuss a further action and make deeper cuts because of the extent of this projected pandemic well into August, and the fact that the province, if the province does decide to lift the state of emergency and start rolling out business again, it's a 6 to 8 month rollout. So there's going to be significant cost per household.
Mike, is this a comment or a question?
It's
Sorry, gentlemen, we do it one piece at a time. So I think, Mr. Cameron, I think I've captured your question. A lot of comments in there. I think everybody would say it's good that you're agreeing with what they're thinking as well. We do need to keep in mind that we are responsible for the expression is the fiscal sustainability of the municipality. We do need to maintain the services and the operations for the municipality. Those take dollars to do so. Staff have outlined what we can do at the moment in terms of the tax rate increase that we had, the tax billing that we have this year, the three scenarios as presented. Would there be other actions in the future? I'm not going to say no, but to say yes might conjure up, what would they be? At this point, we have no idea what might happen down the road. As Mr. Robertson has said, this pandemic and its impact is evolving over the course of days, hours indeed. So we can't, no one is going to suggest that this is a magic solution for everybody. What this is an opportunity to help reduce some of the pressures that all residents and businesses feel from a property tax perspective. It does not mean it is going to solve everybody's financial circumstance. So, having said that, thank you for your comments, Mr. Cameron, your question, Mr. Cameron. Mr. Halpney, do you have a question, sir, on terms of the report? Mr. Halpney, are you still with us, sir? We'll just pause for a moment. Mr. Halpney, are you still connected with the teleconference? Just take a moment, everybody. What staff are going to do are see if they can contact him by telephone. So I'll ask everybody just to be patient for a few minutes. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Your Worship. So when I dial Mr. Halpney's number, it goes directly to his voicemail, which would suggest the line is still open.
Okay.
All I could suggest is perhaps trying louder.
Everybody that is listening, I'm going to raise my voice a wee bit to see if there may be just a bit of an issue with the volume on the line to Mr. Halpney. Mr. Halpney, can you hear me, sir? I'm just going to go around the table to Councilman. Mr. Malloy, can you hear me all right, sir? Uh-oh. Mr. Foster, can you hear me? Mr. Cameron, can you hear me? It is 3:55. The tape has been rolling. We seem to have been disconnected from the council members on the line, and staff are going to pause the button. I just want to get a wee bit of direction here, because this is indeed in the middle of a council meeting. We have lost quorum because council members are not connected to the line. And I'm just going to ask a member of staff to indicate what should we be doing right now.
So, Your Worship, thank you. I think what we need to do is recess briefly while staff look into the technical issues to see if we can regain contact and regain quorum.
Okay. So the mayor is going to call a recess and to allow staff to see if they can reconnect with council members so we regain quorum. And having said that, I now state that the special meeting of council is in recess. We will come back. Whether we come back with quorum or not, the mayor will make a statement of some way, shape, or form what will be happening next. Thank you, everyone, very much for your patience and understanding. Good afternoon, gentlemen. We do believe that we are all reconnected, so I will call the meeting back to order from our recess of about 10 minutes. And just to ensure that we are now back in session and that everyone can hear one another, please, I'll go around the table and Mr. Malloy, please say hello.
Hello?
Mr. Foster, please say hello.
Hello.
Mr. Cameron, please say hello.
Hello.
Mr. Halpney, please say hello.
Hello.
Thank you, sir. Did Mr. Malloy, did you hear everybody's response?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So, we were just briefly going around the table to seek if there were any questions on the staff report, and I think the next person to ask was Mr. Halpney.
If I may say, I think we got cut in the middle of Mike Cameron's comments.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Malloy. I'm not sure, Mr. Cameron, if you got cut off when you were speaking. The question was, did you have any questions on any of the content of the staff report? And I think you had made some comments about in terms of what the federal government programs were, alluding to some of them at any rate, and at the provincial level perhaps as well. And we certainly know the circumstance of from a statistical point of view of residents in our municipality. So was there anything additional that you wanted to say, sir?
I just wanted us to consider that my comments and my question about the tax rate when we're considering our scenario A, B, or C.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Mr. Halpney, did you have any questions, sir?
Yeah, I'd like to thank staff for doing this project here. And scenario C looks to be the one we should be looking at. That's about all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. What I would suggest we do in terms of how we might approach this, again, it's worth repeating. You know, we are responsible for the financial direction to staff in terms of putting together a budget and for operations and services, protecting the fiscal health of the municipality, and we do know that our auditor has recommended a significant increase in our capital reserve, which our budget did. It was based on 0% increase in operations and capital. The pressure point was that unfortunate surprise of the breakdown and not usable anymore compactor in order to buy a replacement one, which we have done.
Excuse me, may I ask a quick question?
This would be Mr. Malloy? Yes, sir.
Yeah, can we have just clarify for me? On page 3 of 6, bottom paragraph begins in summary, scenario A. It says in scenario C would see an alternative 0.44% increase. Should that be decrease?
I'll ask Mr. Robertson to give the response. Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Thanks for the question, Councillor Malloy. No, that is worded correctly in that it says it would be a 0.44 increase, but a key factor there is that it's a 0.44% increase over the 2019 tax amount. In other words, instead of a 3.13% increase that council previously approved, you would be approving a 0.44% tax increase.
Well, then I guess the question would be, why are A and B decreases and C an increase?
If I may, through you, Your Worship.
Mr. Robertson, yeah.
So staff, we're just trying to give council some alternatives, recognizing that that's the most one conservative option available to council is to continue with a very minor increase in the tax rate as opposed to the full 3.13% that was previously.
I got you. Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Were there any other questions for clarification required? I'll just go quickly around the table. Mr. Malloy, other than the question you just asked?
I wouldn't mind opening this up for a bit more discussion as to which way we're going to go.
Yeah,
because I'm at odds about which way I feel. So I just wouldn't mind hearing the rest of council's deliberations.
Yeah, we will do that momentarily. I just want to double check if there are any questions of the content, I'll say, of the scenarios. So you had your question, sorry, you asked a question. I think you indicated you got the appropriate response for you. Any other questions at this point?
At this point.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
No question.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron?
Not at this point, no.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Helpney?
No, not right now, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's almost a I don't want to oversimplify it. I guess from my point of view, I'll put this out on the table for discussion. If we are going to be looking at doing something, quotation marks, that would be what's objective, what is subjective, something meaningful. If indeed we're going down the road, and we are, of looking at providing I'm not sure if the word should be cushion, but providing something that would be of benefit to all of the property taxpayers in our municipality. It's in the I don't want to use an inappropriate expression. Expressions that come to mind might be go big or go home, if it were. We cannot have a massive reduction in the tax rate from 2019. We would not be fiscally responsible, and we would not be responsible to ensure that the operations and services are maintained for the residents of Merrick-Wolford. I would put out there that we would go with the scenario that gives us, I think that's number A, if I have the correct one, and that is the, sorry, I've got the wrong page in front of me. Bear with me a moment, gentlemen. Scenario A, which would give the result in a 1.01 decrease in the 2019 tax rate.
If I may, Your Worship, just to clarify, it would be a 1.01% tax reduction compared to the 2019
Sir,
tax
thank
rate.
you, compared to the 2019 tax rate. Thank you very much. Words are, the words are important, but I think, gentlemen, you understood what I meant. So why don't I put that out there and go around the table and ask, not so much if there, at some point it's going to obviously asking for support of that scenario, but I think this might help us focus on making the decision of which scenario we would like to formalize. So I would turn to Mr. Molloy. Your thoughts, comments, questions.
Well, actually, you know what? I go back to what I said a little while ago. I wouldn't mind hearing some comments from the other councillors at the table of a mixed mind on all of these, and maybe if Councillor Foster could express opinion, and Mr. Cameron.
Yep, thank you, sir. At this point, you don't have any comments or questions?
Not until I hear what they say.
Yep, thank you, sir. Yep, just want to go through this very slowly and methodically again. It's I don't want to say difficult, but just want to manage the ensuring that people get to speak and hear one another clearly and concisely, and the opportunity to comment and ask questions. Mr. Foster.
Yes, I'm in favor of scenario C. And the rationale being that a significant proportion of our residents have experienced no loss of income, on pension, several of them are still working from home, etc. When it comes to a choice between feeding your kids or paying your property taxes, people will feed their children. And if we can remove penalties or lower our interest rate, I guess, for those that can't afford to pay, but any excessive reduction in taxes should be discouraged, because it's not enough to make a difference for those, the bankruptcy between 0.44% tax increase versus a 1.01 tax reduction. I don't believe it's enough money to make a difference, but I think it makes a huge difference to the municipality. Those that if to finalize, those that can afford to pay their taxes should be encouraged to pay it to help support the members of our economy that perhaps won't be able to pay their taxes on time. And I'm sure as Kirsten's sitting there and she's well aware, our default rate or late payment rate or whatever we refer to, it's high already and it's going to get a lot higher. So we need those people that have the bucks that pay up. Thank you.
Sir, and just to make sure everyone heard, you were referring to scenario B?
Scenario C.
C, thank you, sir. Just wanted to make sure everybody could hear that scenario reference. Mr. Cameron.
I understand where Councillor Foster's coming from, but we can't make a judgment on the fact that some people won't suffer and some people will suffer. What we need to do is, at the end of this, we need to ensure that the municipality comes through in the end. So there's going to be a price to pay, whether we pay that price up front right now or we pay it at the end of this scenario that we're going through. There's going to be a price to pay, and in my mind, I think that what we need to do is to minimize the impact up front to our residents in order to try and come out of it a little bit better. I think that some of these packages that we're reviewing today are fine. I think some of them need to be a little bit more aggressive, and I understand that we may put ourselves in a bit of a financial bind, but everybody's going to be in a financial bind. And if we don't come through this, in support of some of these people that are going to be in a very hurtful way, I think we're doing a discredit to the people that we're representing. And I, for one, would hope that we would be willing to take a bit of a hit. And in the end, when it's all over and said and done with, the province and the federal government will be stepping up and making up those shortcomings in the municipalities, because they're not going to allow the municipalities to fall through the cracks. So I think we should be more aggressive. And I'm not really... I think we should reconsider and come back with a more aggressive approach and encompass the whole municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Mr. Helpney.
Yes, I guess we were cut off there when we were talking about the taxes. So did we decide on what scenario we're going for?
No, sir, we have not.
Okay. Well, on the water bills there.
Well, we'll get to the water bills in a bit. At the moment we're focusing on the property taxes, sir.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I'm in favor of the scenario C, as I said before, because I think that's more fair to everyone.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So, can we speak now?
So just a second. Everybody's had their initial thoughts and comments, and now I'll go around the table for questions or comments. And again, I'll go around the table, as it were. So, Mr. Malloy.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it doesn't do anybody any good in the municipality if we cut our revenues so that we can't afford to keep things running the way they should be running. And to that end, I think I have a tendency to agree with Councillor Foster that we put forward, C seems okay to me, but we try not to reduce our revenue too much. Now, having said that, there are going to be people, and let's be blunt, I don't need my taxes to be reduced. I would love to have my taxes reduced, but I don't need to have them reduced. I will still be able to afford to pay my taxes, and I don't think I'm alone in the municipality for this. However, I am more than positive that there are people who will be in some dire straits. And I think what we need to do is to somehow reassure those individuals that if they can't pay their taxes, They're not to get fretted out about it. That we will work on that in the end. We will come to a point where we can satisfy their needs and also collect the taxes. Whether it be that we just defer the taxes, no interest, nothing, just pay them off later on, come up with a payment plan for them individually, whatever the case might be. But we need to do two things. A, keep our revenues up so we can afford those things. Remember, we just passed the budget, which includes a brutal OPP segment of it, and I don't think the OPP is coming telling us, oh, don't worry about it, we're going to cut what you have to pay us by 10% or something like that. So we have to get the revenues together so we can pay what we need to pay to keep the services going. Yet we have to reassure the people who are having trouble, who are in a desperate situation, that we will not forget about them, we will not abandon them, and that we will work out a system by which they can survive until things get on to a better time. That would be my observation.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Mr. Foster.
Essentially in agreement with Councillor Malloy. Again, scenario C, conservative. It gives back something, but doesn't sell the farm. And I'd just like to reiterate that we are the level of government that can't run deficits. We are the level of government that doesn't get to print money. However, both our upper tier partners, the feds and the province, can run deficits, and the federal government can print money. So we're at the level where the pavement hits the road, the rubber hits the road.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Mr. Cameron.
I've said my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Mr. Helpy?
Yeah, like I said, the staff has gone through all this and they recommend C, so I think they have more expertise than we do on that, so that's about all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Helpy. So as your mayor, I would definitely thank staff for bringing forward these scenarios to look at. And I would also like to thank council members for their questions and their comments. I don't think any comment was a wrong comment. I think the important thing that we keep in mind is we are responsible for the fiscal well-being of the municipality to ensure that services are provided, that the operations will run as efficiently, as effectively as possible, particularly during this pandemic crisis. We are indicating that while a municipality is limited as to the extent that they can spend/save money, as has been pointed out, municipalities cannot run deficits. The scenario number C appears to have the support of a good majority of council, if not all. And as I say, I think it is a constructive discussion and an objective way to move forward to providing some, underscore some, relief to the residents and business and residents of our municipality. So I'm going to move forward with a motion, and it's the motion regarding the financial relief for taxpayers. And
Your Worship, if I may, excuse me for interrupting.
yes.
The way staff have designed the report, the motion is one compressed motion with both items together.
That is in the taxes and the water.
Correct, Your Worship.
Thank you. So at the moment, so just, I don't have to repeat it, I probably will, that the motion, when it comes forward, will be with the scenario C with respect to the tax rates that are as outlined in this staff report. And just to recap, that would be see a
question, Your Worship.
Just one moment. See, sorry, I found what I was looking for. C would see. No, that's the wrong one again. I apologize. That would see a result in a tax increase over 2019 of 0.44%. Thank you, gentlemen. And now we'll move on to the staff report regarding the water and sewage.
Can we just ask one more question before we move ahead?
Yes, Mr. Malloy.
I think, given the circumstances, are we going to communicate with our ratepayers that should their circumstances be such that even the 0.44% increase is a burden for them, that they should be contacting, sorry about this, Christine, they should be contacting the finance department and discuss their situation and how they can remedy that situation instead of just ignoring it?
I'm pausing for a moment because I think that's an option that any taxpayer has all the time, number one. There are a number of ways that people pay their tax bill. One is to pay.
No, I understand all that, Your Worship. I'm just saying that in this circumstances, it may be advantageous to everybody involved that we reiterate two of them, that these are your possibilities. This is what you can do. Because there are going to be people who have always paid their taxes straight out, fair up, never a question. Now all of a sudden they're faced with this dilemma, and they may not know what to do. They may not, and I think we should be offering a secure line of and advice from our experienced staff to reassure them that you can do it this way, you can do it this way, because the financial department will have a better idea of the best way of doing it, and they can speak individually to the people in the department, Kristen and everybody else.
I think there's a way to convey that in a not just on our as we put forward this, whether it's done to call it immediate release information piece, decisions and direction that we've given staff regarding property taxes when we get to passing that, after we pass that motion, to indicate that there are. Yeah, you pay by installment. The next one due is you can pay monthly, and if you require any guidance as to what you might want to look at as a way of paying your taxes, to contact the municipal staff, and they could perhaps give you some assistance as to how that process might work. So I think of capturing what you're saying, hopefully, Mr. Malloy, and put that out there that we're interested in you paying your taxes, and we're also interested in ensuring that there is the easiest way possible. There may be options for you that are realistic and that might be outside of the normal practice. There you go. Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Is that Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Foster.
I object to the fact that this resolution is tied to the CAO's report, and we're given three scenarios in each that we have to approve in order to approve the bylaw, but we have no option for adjustment on behalf of the council. This is all being decided by the CAO and staff. We just get to rubber stamp which one. And I object to the fact that they're tied together, because I may approve of one, and I have no intention of approving the other. So the fact that these two are tied together, separate them now.
Sorry, Mr. You're referring to the tax and the water and sewage?
The resolution number, resolution in front of me, it states that council will approve these scenarios. We get to choose which scenario we're approving, and they found the two together, water and wastewater rates and tax rates are both bound into the same bylaw. Am I misreading this, or
No.
is that the way this works?
No. Sorry, Mr. I think, no, you're not misreading. I was just trying to get a clarification we're referring to. And there isn't a problem for us to separate those as two separate motions.
Okay, I would really prefer that we didn't bind them together
Yep.
In the future either.
Staff are taking note of that. Thank you, sir.
If I may, Your
Now,
Worship.
when it does come to a vote, are we voting on two separate bylaws?
We can do that, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Robertson was just going to make a comment, and then we'll move on for the discussion on the water and sewer. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor Foster, appreciate your comments. I just want to reassure Council, there was no intention here of staff trying to direct Council's options and limit them in any way, shape, or form, and my apologies if it appears that way. Our intention was really to provide you with some options, at least as a basis point for starting the discussion. And certainly any resolution of council can be amended right at the table. I just wanted to reassure you had that opportunity.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. We will now focus on the water and water sewer rates. And again, I'll ask staff to speak briefly to the three potential scenarios for council to consider.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not too sure how much more I have to offer on this. However, I do just want to reiterate that certainly these were just, I guess, consider it food for thought, a baseline for starting the discussion. We spent some time looking at the projects that are on place and we tried to look at items, if there was any item that had already been initiated, where spending had been initiated, where we had already committed to a supplier, that type of thing, then that was set aside. But we focused on the ones where council had flexibility, and we tried to give you some options to work with. And just case in point, if I may draw your attention to one example very briefly, is with the sanitary sewer grouting, for example, where in scenario A, we've given you the option of eliminating all spending on sewer grouting in 2020, recognizing that if the economy slows down and interest in development slows down, then perhaps we don't need to be as aggressive in optimizing or minimizing rather the amount of infiltration and groundwater flows to the sewage treatment plant. Whereas in scenario C, we've eliminated $30,000 of the total 50, which would still leave council the $20,000 to work with for a longer term view in minimizing the infiltration in the water treatment and the sewage treatment plant. So I'm certainly open to answer any questions that you may have, and the treasurer, I'm sure, would be happy to do so as well. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. So, as we did earlier, try to be consistent. Go around the table to ask if there are any questions on the report. And then after that, I'll ask for any members if they have any particular direction they would like to see in terms of either the report or alternatives. So, Mr. Malloy.
This time.
Thank you. Mr. Foster.
Yes, question. Water rate study. That is separate from the $50,000 grant or part of the $50,000 wastewater service delivery review?
Mr. Robertson?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. That is separate from the system review. The system review is looking at the operating model. In other words, whether it's beneficial to keep the operations outsourced to an external service provider versus bring it in-house versus look for a partnership at a nearby municipality is another option. Whereas this is a review of our water rate structure, recognizing that we have to operate within the parameters of legislation as noted in the report with the Sustainable Water and Sewage Systems Act.
Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron.
Question similar to Mr. Foster's. I was concerned about the water rate study. By reducing that significantly in the scenario A by $30,000, well, actually all of them by $30,000, would that impact the study that we're going to put forward? Given that the main all the residents within the village itself is the water rate, and would we be compromising that study by reducing the funds that we're putting towards it?
Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the total cost of the water rate study is estimated to be $20,000, and just for clarity, that's a budgeted amount. So it's possible it could come in lower or some variation of that amount. And what has been listed here is the total cost of the whole project. And just to clarify, one of the reasons we listed that is that we have not bound ourselves as an organization, as a corporation yet, to a service provider where we are bound to continue with that. It still remains within council's discretion to defer that project to a subsequent year. And one of the reasons that we chose to list that project is recognizing that the pandemic is such a significant impact on the economy and on our residents and our businesses. We felt it would be important for council to be able to have knowledge of the outcomes of the pandemic before making a decision on the rate structure, which may carry forward for a significant number of years from this point. So, you're going to be facing a year in which there are some fairly significant changes, and it's likely to be an anomaly, but you may not know until the end of the year what the severity of the impact is and the duration, or you might not have a feel of the lag time for recovery. And I felt, given that we had not committed to that yet, we wanted to give council that as an option that you may wish to consider deferring that for 1 year until you have a better understanding of the impact of the pandemic.
Okay, Mr. Halpney.
Yes, as I said before, I'm quite satisfied with the work that the staff has done and recommending scenario C. Granted, it is a 5% increase, but we've got to look at keeping our finances fairly stable for the municipality, and I think that scenario C would help us do that. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Halpney. So now I'll go around the table and ask if there are any specific scenario or alternatives that council have a preference to move forward on. We certainly got an indication from Mr. Halpney regarding scenario C. So I'll turn to you, Mr. Malloy.
Yeah, given that the 10% that we had originally passed was an increase that had been set up by a previous council to offset the cost of the construction. How long, if we go down to 5%, how long will it take us to get back to getting that whole project paid off?
Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And my apologies. That's a difficult question for staff to answer because we don't have future knowledge in terms of what our expenses will definitely be over the longer term. It will certainly slow down the pace at which we rebuild the balance of the wastewater reserve fund. It is, to be very forthright with council, it would not be something that the auditor is recommending, that we reduce the rate at which we rebuild that fund. Having said that, we wanted to be very open and transparent with council and recognize that it is ultimately your decision and that the auditor provides you with advice.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Foster.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm not in favor of any of the scenarios presented per se. I'm not looking for a reduction in the water rate per se, but I would really like to see a removal of the multiple water rate charges for businesses and businesses with the residents, the split commercial residential. what I need is figures from our chief financial officer on our income monthly from residential, our income from commercial, and whether or not we can afford to have all meters in town, at least for an extended period, or for the duration of the disaster, that all meters are residential and it's 1 meter per building, if you will. Quite frankly, our businesses, our residences right now, they're not making any money. They're just empty. So charging them commercial water rates is adding insult, or if you will, adding injury to insult. So even though a lot of them think about the water rates, what we need to do now is pull together. I wouldn't necessarily endorse reducing the water rates, again, referring to the logic in terms of taxes. Those that can afford to pay should pay. Those that can't afford to pay, we'll try and make arrangements for. But we've got to take this burden off of businesses where they're racking up $1,000 every 2-month bills for water that they're not using. So I would really like to defer this motion until we have more information and direct our chief financial officer to present us with commercial versus residential income, total income for each billing cycle, and whether or not we can afford to remove the commercial burden at this point in time, using the existing numbers that we have today, as in keeping the base rate that we have right now and working with that. Thank you.
Rob, can I have a question of Robert?
Sorry,
I just wanted to clarify a statement.
Gentlemen, just to make sure everybody knows who's speaking when, I was about to go to Mr. Cameron, but I understand someone has a question on Mr. Foster's comments, and could you please state your name?
Really? Timothy.
Mr. Malloy, do you have a question regarding Mr. Foster's?
Yeah, did I hear you correct, Bob? Did you say 1 meter per building?
Just, yeah, in terms of however the structure is now, I'm using, for example, the idea of a building on, Mike Z's, for example.
Yes.
He's got 1 meter going into
Your
that
Worship,
building.
if I may interject.
Gentlemen, you have to be careful in terms of identifying individuals.
Okay, the only reason I felt safe is because he mailed us all a copy of his water bill. But that being said, a certain business that is being charged residential and commercial, and there are several businesses in the village where the business owners live in the same building or live above, or you have a commercial enterprise on the ground floor, residential, etc. If you have a single meter, and again, we need this information from our billing department so we can decide whether it's feasible. I'm sure Kirsten is sitting there thinking this could be a disaster, and I don't blame her, but we need real information. So I would suggest we defer the entire water bill discussion till either first thing next week, and we make a decision, because there's no way we can go forward and make an informed decision without having the actual numbers in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Mr. Cameron.
Yeah, thank you. I have a tendency agreeing with Councillor Foster. I think we need more information given the gravity and that the people in the village are under with all these $1,000 water bills. And, deferring everything to 2021 concerns me as well, because this has been an issue that's been going on for the ages. And I think more information so that we can make a better decision, I would be all for that. And I'm not really in favor of any of the scenarios either, A, B, or C. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Mr. Helpney.
Yeah, I guess maybe we do need more information. Although, as I said before, I'm quite confident in our staff and what they figure we should do. So, other than that, I have nothing to say.
Thank you, Mr. Helpney. I just want to remind council that I think everybody has their finger on the pulse of the challenges of water and sewer billing at this time. Whether you are a business that is completely shut down, just a few of the businesses in terms of our businesses that are offering takeout services or even online services that may or may not be in the commercial area on water and sewage or in a grocery store. And we do have that legal obligation to pay for the full cost of the service. So mindful that whether, we may not be, I'm not sure if it's the right analogy, but I'll put it there because you do have a choice, but folks that go away for the winter, they still pay for the service. Obviously, they have a choice whether they go away or not. But the point is, whether you are using, if you're on the system, whether you're using it or not, there is you do need to contribute to that cost because we have that legal obligation. I haven't heard anybody say that somebody should not pay anything. That's the way systems are financed. And I want to also point out that the water rate study is will go a long way to see do we have that right balance, not just between residential and commercial, but even within commercial we know a number of scenarios that are out there. The challenge, I think, the concern I would have is what kind of information do we want to make? I'll say what kind of a decision, because there needs to be a more than perceived. There needs to be an understanding if there's going to be any changing in terms of the water sewage rate. At the moment, it needs to be seen as equitable to all users of that, whether it's residential or commercial, and a clear understanding that if there is a significant change in one or the other, and for everybody, what is that impact going to be on the sustainability of that system? Not in the years to come, but in the year within which we are living right now. So we do need to be mindful for that. Staff have had some, we'll say, quiet sidebar conversations in terms of what they might be able to bring forward for council to consider above and beyond, or separately from, or differently from, if you will, the two scenarios that they have outlined for us to consider. And they may have in their mind what length of time it would take to do this. Everything that we're doing at the moment is challenging, and we've all acknowledged that, and I thank council for appreciating that as well. So, having said that, I'll ask Mr. Robertson to provide some information to us in terms of how we might move forward.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I just want to be very forthright with council. I'm going to offer you some information, but I just want to caution you that information is not being offered in any with any motive to steer you. I just want to make sure that council is fully informed before you make a decision on this. And one thing I just wanted to make you aware of is the water rate study and some of the issues that we are discussing here in terms of having meters allocated to specific buildings, dispersing costs between residential and commercial uses, and whether that commercial and residential use are in separate properties or single properties. I just want to draw council's attention to that is a very, very complex analysis. I completely appreciate council's concern for the well-being of our businesses and the well-being of our residents as well. But I do want to just draw your attention to the fact that does require a significant amount of expertise in understanding the legislation and looking at the myriad of issues that are all brought together in that analysis. And it can be a somewhat gray analysis and complex analysis. The other thing I did want to make council aware of is just to draw your attention to the fact that when the municipality issues our tax bills as well as our water bills, those are issued just to the owners of the property. And in the same way that the municipality does not have control over whether a landlord extends any savings or increased expenses to their tenant, we also can't control the negotiation between a landlord and a tenant in how they package their agreement. So for example, if a landlord chooses to require a tenant to pay their water bill, the landlord may be reducing their base rental rate, or vice versa. So I just want to draw council's attention to that. A key factor in the decisions that you're making here today is that while the municipality and council can offer relief, we cannot control whether that relief is extended to residents in a residential rental agreement or to commercial tenants in a commercial lease agreement. So that is certainly a challenge in terms of offering or thinking about the ultimate outcome that you're trying to achieve by offering this relief. I just wanted to present that as some context in case it helps you with your decision making.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Somebody was going to ask a question. Could you identify yourself, please, and ask your question?
Bob Foster.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
May I suggest that we've been at this for a while. Can we defer the question of tax and water payment relief until such time as staff has had the opportunity to assemble some figures for us, particularly on the water rates, rather than consume more time here now and reach no resolution whatsoever? So I would personally we moved on with better information at a later date. That's meets with your pleasure.
Certainly, it is council's can defer both the decision on tax and or water and sewer. We just want to clarify amongst everyone what kind of
Your Worship, if I may, I'm sorry for interjecting. I just want to make sure that we haven't lost any members of council. I just heard a sound. Was that from one of the phones or from? Oh, my apologies, Your Worship. Sorry for interrupting.
That's quite all right. We could certainly go around the table to clarify two things. If there is a preference to delay moving forward on the property taxes, which I was going to from the earlier conversation suggesting the motion would be for scenario C, or defer making a decision on that. And if it's more information on water or sewer, just to clarify, what is that information going to be? And bearing in mind a bit of the conversation, so staff have a clear indication what is you want, and how that's going to help come to some kind of a decision and direction that council would make on the water sewer rates. So I will turn to Mr. Malloy. Would you want to what is your expectation on the information that staff would bring forward, and would you want to and obviously with that we would be deferring any motion on water and sewer rates, and would you want to defer making a decision on the property tax rate? Mr. Malloy.
Yeah, I thought we'd agreed, certainly correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we had agreed on the tax rates.
Yes, correct.
That we decided on, and I think for the water and wastewater issues, I think what we need to see is if we may, or if we can suss it out, is some of the results or the implications, should we say, if we went to a one fee program for the interim time that we are facing this issue. I think Robert's points are well taken. We're a tourist town, and there ain't going to be any tourists in this town by a long shot over the next little while if this continues. And we do have to show some leniency, some grace towards our businesses who have water rates and water costs because we have minimum, the minimum charge, you can use zero and you're still going to get charged the minimum.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees and understands all of the comments that everybody has said about the sensitivities and of the and indeed the crisis that so many tourism-based businesses are facing at this
To
time.
extend the conference for 15 minutes, press 1.
I just got an odd comment from the on the teleconference, and I just want to go around the table to make sure that everybody is still connected. Mr. Malloy,
Yeah.
Mr. Foster,
Yes, I pressed 1.
Mr. Cameron,
Yes, I'm still here.
Mr. Helpney.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, that was a voice out of I don't know where on the line. So thank you, Mr. Malloy. So you, Mr. Malloy, you would be all right moving forward with the tax, property tax motion?
Yes, yeah, sure.
Thank you. And Mr. Foster, you were indicating that you would like to see them both
I'm in
deferred?
favor of going ahead with the tax.
Okay.
Motion on tax relief.
Yep, okay.
However, what I would like to see before we make any decisions regarding water, I would like to see a breakdown of commercial revenue, residential revenue, and the implications of switching all of our commercial accounts and considering them as residential.
Thank you,
So
sir.
before we move forward, I want to see whether we can afford anything, and then we can fine tune it to see what we can afford.
Yep,
But
thank
I'm
you.
not in favor of reducing the water rates right now. The percentage increase that we just experienced, just working out some relief. So yes, I'm in favor of moving ahead with the tax rate relief.
Great, and thank you so much. Staff are nodding their head and jotting down some clear direction that council as a whole might give them in short order. Thank you, Mr. Foster. Mr. Cameron, are you all right to move forward with the tax rate motion?
I am.
And is there any, you just heard a good outline from Mr. Foster of direction that we might give to staff to bring back information, more information, clear information, to have a further discussion on the water sewer rates.
I agree with his comments. We need a little bit more information.
Yeah,
Because,
and that's the kind of information that would be beneficial from your perspective as well?
yeah, I think it would be because all the scenarios that I'm seeing in front of me, there are a few questions I have. Nothing really out to me that that's the way we should go. So a little bit more information
Thank you, sir.
would be helpful.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Cameron. Mr. Helpney, are you all right moving forward on the tax rate motion?
Absolutely.
And are you all right, sorry, rephrase, you clear on, in terms of the kind of information we would ask staff to bring back regarding water and sewer?
I guess the other councillors think we should have more information, so I'd go along with it.
Thank you, sir. So what I will do now is, I'll go around the table and ask for agreement. It'll be, doesn't need to be a motion. Agreement with the direction to staff to bring back information. I believe our clerk has captured the specifics of Mr. Foster's comments of what staff would be bringing back for us for consideration. So I'll go around the table and ask if you are in agreement with that direction to staff. Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm in agreement that we move forward on the on the changes of the tax relief, and that we wait for the responses to Councillor Foster's question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Malloy. Yeah, the question is, are you in agreement with that direction to staff to bring back that information on water and sewer?
Certainly, yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
Can we add that the full amount of reserves that we have into that as well? And I am in favor of supporting Mr. Foster.
Yep, certainly, yes. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Helpe, you are in support of that direction to staff?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So, gentlemen, based on that, I now have so that is it's been captured in the minutes, so that direction has been given to staff. So I will now move to the motion, and I have a clean motion. So the motion you have in your packages, which is, we'll call it that two-part motion, the one that dealing with water rates and the tax rate, is not being used. What I have before me is a clean motion, and I will, the motion will be moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Helpney. I'm going to read the motion, then I will ask Mr. Malloy and Mr. Helpney if they are okay to be the mover and the seconder, and then I will call the vote. So, the motion is, be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville-Wolford does hereby receive report CAO-02-2020, being a report to provide council with options for the financial relief of the ratepayers of the Village of Merrickville-Wolford due to COVID-19 for information purposes. And the council does hereby approve scenario C with respect to the 2020 tax rates as outlined in this report. Mr. Malloy, are you all right to make that motion?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Helpney, are you okay to second that motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Members, you've heard the motion. Are there any questions?
No.
Mr. Malloy,
No.
thank you. Mr. Foster?
No.
Mr. Cameron?
No.
Mr. Helpney?
No.
Thank you very much. And now I will ask if you are in support of the motion. Mr. Malloy?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Foster?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Cameron?
Just for clarification, scenario C is what we're going with?
Yes, that is correct, sir.
In favor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
And the mayor is as well. So, gentlemen, the motion is carried.
Wow, that's awful. What is that?
That's the mayor.
Oh, is that? God, that was terrible.
Actually, no, Mr. Malloy was not.
It sounded like it. I've heard it before.
I'm just checking with staff.
So, apologies, your worship, if you bear with us, just because of the change in the motion, we're just making sure we have the proper resolution for your signature. Bear with us momentarily, if you will.
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, may I, Bob Foster, may I make a comment at this point in time?
Yes, Mr. Foster, you may.
Regarding communications, one of the primary objectives in emergency management is to control the communication lines, to control the messaging, as it were. And I know our staff and yourself, all of the members of the emergency management group have been working very hard and instituting changes. I really think they should blow their own horn a little bit, if I may say so, whether in a direct mail out or more so on the website, but a direct mail out would be good too, just to let people know what our staff have been doing, what the emergency management group has been doing, and how they're working to, how would you say, affect, at least to deal with what's going on right now. And I would suggest that it even go out weekly, especially if we can charge the mail out to the province during this time, as was suggested before. But I really think the public needs to be aware of the lengths that the municipality is going to.
Thank you, Mr. Foster, and I think that is a very good comments in terms of what is the proverbial, feet under the surface of the water as the duck appears to be gliding along. It is, the staff has been doing, I'll use the Herculean efforts to, as I said at the beginning, not just to, be working from home, as an example. One can only imagine the challenges you have in a very rural municipality, not just from the technical point of view, but ensuring that things such as bandwidth and so on are working as effectively and efficiently as possible. I did receive an email the other day from a resident with military background, was more than impressed with the the processes that have been put in place at our landfill site. And the gentleman said, whoever came up with the idea should get a pat on the back. You can be assured that there were multiple people involved in not just coming up with that, the need, identifying the need, but in putting in place a process or procedure, not just for the physical movement of vehicles and people, but also the training of our staff to ensure that everyone is protected as best as possible in these circumstances for the residents and the staff of our municipality. Yes, you're correct. It is not inappropriate to individually and collectively blow our horn. I think staff have done a phenomenal job on behalf of everyone who lives in our municipality. So thank you for that, Mr. Foster. We'll go back now to. Sorry, could you identify yourself and then?
Timothy Malloy.
Yes, Mr. Malloy, go ahead, sir.
Okay, and just in addition to Councillor Foster's comment, I would really, if the council could get sort of a weekly a download, upload of what's been going on. I get stopped a lot in the streets asking me, what about this, what about this? I have no answers. I get no updates on things. I know we've got that one very nice long one. I don't need that every week. I just need quick bullets on what's going on in public works, what's going on in finances, things that are that people want to hear about and know about. And I think we're the ones on the streets, and we're the ones that are being phoned at home off on the streets. And I think we need some sort of regular update on what's happening in the village.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm just not sure what it is we're going to say. From an operational point of view, a service point of view, it is, we'll say, business as usual. Obviously, it's not normal times, so there will be variations in terms of timelines and so on. So I'm not really sure what it is you are expecting staff to do, whether because it will take a certain amount of time and effort of not just someone to do it, but to I don't think
so. I think a brief update on any. I'm not talking about the nitty gritty of operations, but of things that have happened that are out of the normal. Let's say, put it that way, that have happened and how things are being handled. And I can't imagine that takes any less time or any more time than putting together an agenda for a council meeting every 2 weeks. So I'm not looking for an epistle.
Yep.
I'm looking for a brief outline as to what's been going on. Only you don't have to tell me that Public Works is filling in the holes on the streets. I don't care about that. But if there's something special going on, we should know about. Then then instead of hearing about it on the streets and looking like a person with an egg all over their face, because I haven't got a clue what they're talking about. I'd very much appreciate it if staff would just give an update on what's going on.
If I could jump in, Mr. Mayor?
That would be, hang on, sorry, that would be Mr. Foster?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I hope I can paraphrase what Councilor Malloy is looking for. It's a bullet points for changes. For example, changes with procedures at the landfill. If you sent that to all the councillors so that they could elucidate that to their residents. Changes to procedures at the office. People will find out these things as they try and pay their bills, but if the councillors know ahead of time, we will feel like we're not caught flat-footed.
Yep.
So if we get the changes sent to us, just bullet points, it doesn't have to be long, whether what's going on at the landfill, why for example, why there is a total fire ban on in the county. We all know, but we need the official line.
Yeah.
Just little items like that affect people's day-to-day lives that councillors can be aware of so that they can offer assurances to their residents.
Yep, I think that's a reasonable expectation to continue what we have been doing. Obviously,
we haven't been doing that.
Sorry, Mr. Malloy.
We haven't been doing that.
Mr. Malloy.
Yes, sir.
Please don't interrupt. Thank you. So, council may have not been receiving an email not going to revisit everything that we've conveyed to council as we move forward. Scrambling, I might say, it seems like a long time, but it was, in round numbers, 3 weeks now. And the Herculean efforts that staff did to get the information out that we all received as council members as well, in terms of calling it, closing down, buttoning down things, the municipal office, our recreation grounds, et cetera, et cetera.
For 15 minutes, press 1.
And the information piece that was sent out, I believe, last Friday, yes, extremely long and detailed, and it was value in having that for members. And here we are into the week after that. Staff will continue to do that, albeit more abbreviated. So thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. And
I have a comment, Mr. Mayor.
And I'll get there in a moment. Thank you, I think that was Mr. Cameron. Thank you. So we'll continue to do that. Mr. Cameron.
I think it would be nice that we sent Dennis Food Town for him and his staff putting themselves at risk on a daily basis for supplying our food for us. I think a little recognition to Dennis and his staff would be appropriate, and I would appreciate that council passes our appreciation along. Thank you.
So we'll get back to staff are making sure that we have the proper wording in these final motions so we move forward towards the end of our meeting.
Your worship, so what I have for you here is just the resolutions and bylaws to be changed with regard to your motion related to the property tax budget.
Okay.
The property tax rates.
Right, okay. Thank you. So I have a mover and a seconder for this motion, which will be the bylaw to amend the bylaw regarding the tax rates for 2020. So the mover would be Mr. Malloy and the seconder, Mr. Helpney. Gentlemen, you okay to put that motion forward? Thank you. Mr. Helpney?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Helpney. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 31-2020, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 23-2020, being the bylaw to set the 2020 tax rates, be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 31-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions? Mr. Malloy?
No.
Mr. Foster?
No.
Mr. Cameron?
No.
Mr. Helpney?
No.
Thank you, gentlemen. All in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Scenario C is what we're discussing. I'm in favor.
That is correct. It's the bylaw to confirm the motion that we passed, correct, sir? Scenario C. And you said yes, sir? Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
And the mayor votes yes as well. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And
So if I may, Your Worship, just to clarify, so the bylaw that you just approved now was to set the tax rates.
Yep.
This resolution and bylaw is to amend the budget document in relation to property taxes. And if I'll just draw your attention to the fact that while the title uses the words water and wastewater, that's just because it's the proper name of the budget document.
Okay.
But you will notice that Appendix B has been removed from the resolution and the bylaw. It's been deleted. So so in this case, we are just asking council to approve the budget document in relation to property taxes.
okay. Gentlemen, did you hear the comments from Mr. Robertson clearly, Mr. Malloy?
It was a little low. I think he's a little too far away from the phone.
Okay, so I captured Mr. Robertson's comments. So we have a bylaw now which is going to amend the
budget document.
The budget document. The title of the budget document reads Operating Capital, Water and Wastewater, and Salary Grid. the bylaw that we're going to pass now to amend that budget document will exclude the Schedule B, which is regarding the water sewer. Everybody clear on that, I trust?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
Councillor Foster, yes. So I believe that what we're doing is taking away the reference to the water and sewer and sticking with the tax rate changes.
correct. Thank you. So the motion will be moved by Mr. Malloy. You all right to put that motion forward, Mr. Malloy?
Yes, sir.
You're all right to put that motion, second that motion, Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you. So it is moved by Mr. Malloy, and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 30-2020, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 20-2020, being the bylaw to adopt the 2020 operating capital water and sewer budgets and the 2020 salary grid, be read a first and second time, that bylaw 30-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions, Mr. Malloy?
None.
Mr. Foster?
And this excludes any changes to the wastewater at this point.
That is correct.
Yes, no question.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
No question.
Mr. Halfney?
No.
Thank you, gentlemen. All in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
In favor, yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
In favor.
Thank you. Mr. Halfney?
Yes.
And the mayor as well votes yes. The motion is carried. And I think we are now moving down to a confirmatory bylaw. So it's a confirmatory bylaw. I'm sure, Mr. Malloy, Mr. Halpney, you are all right to move and second. Mr. Malloy?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you. It's moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 28-2020, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting of April the 9th, 2020, be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 28-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions, Mr. Malloy?
None.
Mr. Foster?
We can anticipate another meeting shortly to deal with the sewer water question.
I'll speak to that in a moment. We're not adjourning yet, so we'll pass this one first.
No problem. I'm in favor of that.
Thank you. Sorry, it's any questions? No questions?
No, sorry. No
That's
question.
quite all right. Mr. Cameron?
No question.
Mr. Halpney?
No.
Thank you. And with that, I'll ask Mr. Malloy. In favor?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
In favor.
Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
And the mayor as well. The motion is carried. Thank you. Before I read the motion to adjourn, so in terms of an expectation, when staff will have information back for us, they're looking at one another in terms of being cautious as putting out a date, and I don't have a calendar in front of me. I would say this to members of council, it would not be next week. You can count on that. What you can count on is an expectation that they are going to aim for the following week, which would then be the week of the
20th, your worship.
the week of the 20th of April. Underscore the week of. So
Yep, that's
we will,
acceptable.
that's indeed more than.
Sorry, I'm just looking at my calendar, realizing there's a lot of holes in it right now.
Well, and I say this respect to all the council members. There are not a lot of holes in terms of time for staff to maintain the regular day-to-day work that they do, and I think we all do appreciate that. And I will say on behalf of council to staff, notwithstanding our great expectations of what we want, we do appreciate what you do, and we do understand that this can cause stress. when you might think, here's an agenda package giving council the information to afford them the opportunity to make a decision, and to have, to not have it be seen as pushback to staff. It is, it's, everybody has the residents' best interest. We know that, council knows that, our staff know that. So when we want to assure you, while it may be, it is unfortunate that things are not always, while they may seem simple to do, they can be complex. And it's just as we want to ensure the decisions that the council make in terms of moving forward, not just on what we did already on the tax rates, there will be implications. We just don't know clearly what they all will be in the middle of this worldwide pandemic and the emergency we are in the province of Ontario, any more than what the impacts might be in any changes in the changes we can expect to make. What ones we don't know on our water and sewer billing. We all know every action creates a reaction, and we want to ensure from a fiscal perspective we are, from a provincial legislative point of view and a responsibility point of view, of maintaining the fiscal integrity and the structural integrity of our water sewer system, an integral part of the infrastructure in our municipality. So gentlemen, I appreciate your conversations and your input and your questions. They're very valuable. I would like to also acknowledge how respectful we have been just in terms of the conversation and the patience. I think this technology has worked very well for us, even though we did have that little hiccup at one point in the middle of our meeting. And so I thank you all for that. In the meantime, so as we do, we're focusing on the needs. We all know what we would want. Idealistically, this crisis would be over tomorrow. We know it won't be. We know what we need to do, how we do it, and how it will work. Takes patience and time and clarity. So I thank you for that. And again, on behalf of council, I thank the staff for being patient with us, because we're out on the streets. We do know you appreciate the residents and know the residents as well as you can, and we thank you for that.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're welcome.
One last comment?
Just, I'll get it in a moment. We know there's one taxpayer. We know we're all at risk in some way, shape, or form. But at the end of the day, we're all people who live in our municipality. And best efforts, we are all working together to get through this in some way, shape, or form. Mr. Malloy, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate my support of, I believe it was Councillor Foster's comment about communications to the ratepayers, making sure that we're getting stuff out to them, whether they're drop mailing or however we do it, just so that they know that things are running as smoothly and as correctly as possible.
Yep. And efficiently as well under the circumstances, yes. And whether we get a communique out today or not, I would suggest it's not likely. Possibly on our web page, given that it's coming up to 5:30 in the afternoon. There's an expectation. We can just get something up on the web page today or Facebook today. Highly unlikely.
I wasn't suggesting that. So.
No. I was just for edification. Staff think they might have something up. Or I will just pause for one moment, gentlemen, if we could.
Your Worship, the audio recordings of this meeting will be available on the website right after the meeting today. Yes,
that we know. Yes, and I'm sure many numerous people will listen into it, and that's great that they do. An interesting piece, and I cannot recall where I heard this, but in our area, most people are getting their information from the media. Not from websites, social, there's probably always social media of some way, shape, or form. One of the challenges is we have a weekly newspaper, and there wasn't anything in the paper last week because the one that gets distributed in our municipality, the North Grenville Times, have laid off their staff. And whether they brought some back or not, I'm not sure. I know that some, though, are now going to start working, whether they are brought back on staff or not. So bit of a lag there. And that's why it was a good direction that council gave to staff at the beginning, that not only do we put things on our webpage and the municipal Facebook page and do the send out to our media, but we also did and will continue to do a drop mailing. Obviously, there's a bit of a time lag in there as well, but we will continue to do that. So again, thank you, all of you gentlemen, for your input, comments, questions, and direction and
To
decisions that
extend
we
the
have made,
conference for 15 minutes, press 1.
that we have done today. On that, I would say to council members, to staff, and anyone who may listen to the audio, which again will be uploaded very shortly after the meeting adjourns, stay safe, stay healthy, please stay sound as best you can. I know it's a holiday weekend. Please do not be tempted to have your family gatherings as you would traditionally do. And everyone, please take care. So I have a motion. It will be moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. I do not believe I need to go and ask them if they are okay for the motion. And they are moving that, be it hereby resolved that the special meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville does now adjourn at 5:25 p.m. until the call of the mayor, subject to need. All in favor?
Yes.
And that is carried. Gentlemen, thank you one and all. Take care.
Yep, just on a party note, our longest